Good morning, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. You are coming to the conversation with members of VinFuture Prize Council and Pre-Screening Committee today. Welcome all of you. Thank you so much. And this is the opening event in the framework of VinFuture SciTech Week, VinFuture Prize 2022. Kính thưa quý vị đang đến với chương trình giao lưu cùng với các hội đồng giải thưởng của giải thưởng VinFuture năm 2022. Và kể từ giờ phút này chương trình sẽ được diễn ra bằng tiếng Anh, nên chúng tôi rất kính mong quý vị chúng ta sẽ cùng đeo tai nghe để được nghe chuyển ngữ tiếng Việt, để chúng ta cùng nhau tạo nên một diễn đàn đa chiều, lắng nghe những câu chuyện vô cùng thú vị đến từ những nhà khoa học hàng đầu thế giới. Ngày hôm nay đang đến với Việt Nam, đến với Hà Nội, đến với VinUni để cùng chia sẻ điều đó với chúng ta. Cảm ơn quý vị rất nhiều. Ladies and gentlemen, the VinFuture Prize Council is a global and diverse team of distinguished individuals from academia, research, and industry, globally renowned for their achievements and contributions in advancing human progress in the fields of science, technology, and industry. Besides, VinFuture Pre-Screening Committee is a diverse team of well-established individuals from varied fields of academia, science, technology, and industry. The Pre-Screening Committee is responsible for reviewing and identifying qualified nominations following the selection criteria set by the Prize Council and preparing supporting documents for shortlisting before presenting them to the Prize Council. And the VinFuture Prize is an international prize to honor outstanding scientific achievements and promote innovations for humanity with the participation of the world-leading scientists, policymakers, leaders of technology corporations, and the prize laureates. And the discussion today with the Prize Council and Pre-Screening Committee provides us with an opportunity to learn more about the current situation, the progress, and the future perspective in science and technology, and its impact, as well as the most updated achievements from our distinguished scientists who spent their valuable time to working on the evaluation progress of the VinFuture Prize 2022. And now I would like to invite all of you to pay your attention to the main stage for the introduction of our two councils.
For the time being, the current status quo of the COVID-19 pandemic technically has been stabilized, and some of the affected countries have now entered the new normal stage. However exquisitely revealing this might sound, it is the post-pandemic remnants featuring personal traumatic experiences caused by the losses of our loved ones, unresolved matters pertaining to the insufficiency of healthcare and nourishment, or the addressed problematic issues befalling our ecosystem and energy sustainability that leave us no choice but to take action.
Reviving and reshaping.
The second VinFuture Prize season, which honors breakthrough scientific research and technological innovations worldwide, has officially stepped into the stage of preliminary selection since May 18, 2022. This event is a gathering hall where eminent scientists and many organizations of prestige from over 70 nations around 6 continents join hands to reshape the new world. Ever since the pre-screening process, all participants who set their sight on the VinFuture Grand Awards have been strictly and thoroughly evaluated by the Assessment Council of VinFuture 2022, whose judging criteria closely follow the highest international standards, ensuring scientific aspects as well as the transparency and fairness of this award. And this morning, let us together welcome the presence of all members from the second VinFuture Prize season's Honorable Assessment Council.
Please give it up one more time for all of our beloved scientists, our distinguished professors to be here today. We hold all of you here. We're so honored. And now it's time for all of our distinguished professors to discuss 3 topics with leading scientists, entrepreneurs, policymakers, and talented students during this event today. And they will share the insights and business valuable experiences through their distinguished careers. And there are 3 topics. The first one is globalization in science and technology. The second one is the stories of how female scientists have overcome the challenges to achieve success. And lastly, the opportunities and the challenges that faced by the scientists from the developing countries. And each session will last 70 minutes, including 50 minutes of speaker discussion and 20 minutes of the audience's interaction. And now it's time for us to come to the very first topic today. And now let's take a look with the short video clip about the first topic.
The world is currently facing enormous obstacles, crises, and recessions. Are scientific and technology-developed movements the solutions? The answer is yes. COVID-19 has become a tremendous catastrophe for all humanity. And the human weapon in that immense battle is none other than science and technology. Scientific and technological development has accelerated the globalization pace throughout the 21st century. Up to now, globalization in science and technology has been creating an enormous and far-reaching impact, covering the research object, direction, scope, and level of scientific research. The concern is merely how to bring the global intelligence closer together to light up the scientific fires all over the world. And that is also the topic covered in
this panel discussion.
Ladies and gentlemen, and now it's time for the topic globalization in science and technology. And now I would love to invite to the stage for the first panel, Professor Sir Kostya Novoselov, Professor Jennifer Tuochase, Professor Leslie Valiant, and Professor Vũ Hà Văn, and also Professor Gerard Albert Muru, and Dr. Sui Dong Huang, the moderator of this session. So professors, please. Welcome all of you to the VinUni Auditorium. And we have met some of you online last year, and now we're so honored to have you offline here in our event. Thank you so much for being here with us. The audience is giving up for the first panel here with the first topic of today. Thank you for coming. And now it's time for the Dr. Sui Dong Huang to moderate this session. Professors, please. Thank you.
Welcome to the first session in this beautiful morning in Hanoi. Today we have this group of very special guests to talk about globalization. So the first question I want to ask this panel is, globalization brought amazing change to all of us. Moving forward, what do you think of the biggest challenge we're facing for humanity? How can we take more from globalization benefits? What did the whole world benefit in the past?
Well, I think most of us here who are scientists are partly in science because we enjoy the fact that science is so global, and science, mathematics, engineering are global without us having to explain it. And so for me, a globalization of science means that more and more of the talent around the world will be captured in science, where the benefits of science, I think we understand what the big topics are. And so we represent different sciences here. So I'd just like to emphasize that in the pure sciences, like mathematics, mathematical sciences, I think the opportunities to bring more talent into science from around the world are enormous. This is partly because mathematics is universal. Also, computing is universal. It's the same everywhere, except it may cost a different amount. So there are also some topics which, there are some new opportunities which encourage globalization. I think one topic I've worked on for a long time is machine learning. And even decades ago, I used to say that the special thing about machine learning is that technology transfer can be achieved in one afternoon, which means that it's anyone in the world can apply the best algorithms and get some interesting results for the problems they're interested in. I mean, also I'd say that the world is, for doing pure science and mathematics, the conditions are improving. The web makes available to us knowledge on a scale which has never been available before. And also that science has become more of a level playing field because instead of science being done in small local cabals, which are hard to access by other people, people rush to publish their results with preliminary forms so that everyone can work on the benefit. So here I've emphasized the opportunities in pure science, which offers globalization. I'll stop here.
Thank you. That's a very good point. Especially, I agree on the machine learning and AI front. This globalization is actually tremendous because AI requires a huge amount of data. You cannot say your data is only limited to one country. So beyond the AI and the machine learning, I would love to actually have Professor to add from your perspective. Kostya.
Thank you. First of all, I completely agree that somehow, which we still don't know why and how, science got this global property inside it, and I think we still underappreciate this property. But you can see the most clear example is why we still have only one mathematics. So in principle, we can invent as many as we want, but somehow it always converges into one. And I think there is still some field property of this global knowledge which we still don't appreciate entirely. That somehow you cannot really localize this knowledge in one country or in one institution. It just has this property of spreading around. At the same time, of course, many countries and many institutions make it an equal sign between science and technology, which is not absolutely necessarily the case, though science definitely help with the future technological solutions, even though sometimes in the mysterious ways, sometimes in some wrong ways as well. So you can make your science working for you or against you at the same time. So, and because of that, we see that there is this global race for talents. So the only way to promote science, there is absolutely no any other way but to support talents, and that's what we really see these days on the global scale. There is a absolutely global race for talents, which is maybe good for in some cases. It's pretty much guaranteed that if you are a talented student in Wien University, you would be eventually found, and you will, if you are active enough, or you can get a job in the leading company or in the leading institution. So that's thanks to a globalization, but then it also leads to segregation, which is an issue by itself. So now we have not only the same segregation in terms of countries or in terms of institutions. Private capital start to play a huge role in this area. So of course, computer science is not my area, but we see quite a few breakthroughs happening in private companies. And we see that they become quite a powerful player in this talent race as well. So I think we will see in the future quite interesting perturbations exactly due to this globalization in the way how we produce and distribute knowledge. The only thing I can say for in terms of to be a little bit more optimistic, that science got this amazing self-healing property that it actually manages to survive segregation, globalization, faking, and so on. It just been surviving for the last 500 years. I'm sure it's going to survive even further.
Great points. I kind of agree more on the points of talents. I myself is actually a benefit of that globalization. I was born in China, educated in the UK, and worked in the US. So thank you, Professor Naslov. We can't talk about globalization without the European perspective. So I will invite Professor Morale to add a few points.
I'm sorry, it's just I cannot hear well.
I'm just saying, we love to get your perspective on globalization of science and technology.
Well, in terms of globalization, for me, we have to work on really the very global problems: energy, of course, water, and nutrition, and so on. Personally, I'm really pushing for the energy. I'm a person of which is working on lasers, on extremely short pulse lasers, lasers which can, in fact, produce peak power so high that we can do nuclear reactions, which was this novelty. And we got a glimpse last week on the news that really lasers and energy, laser could produce energy. Okay, now we have to be very careful, of course, because this is something which has been in the making for about 50 years, and we still have a lot of problems. And myself, I would like to work on some of the problems because right now what has been proposed, what has been demonstrated, is still, which will be really magnificent, because if fusions, nuclear fusion works, then it's unlimited, and it's really an unlimited amount of energy that we can produce. And but of course there is a lot of things, a lot of hurdle still to break, and one of these hurdle is not just try to do it once in over a year, but try to produce it at 1 hertz, once a second or something like this, okay? Which is, we are very far from that, and but so this is very, but of course it's very encouraging from the point of view of globalization. I think it's an incredible result, okay? And also it's a result which invites all scientists, to gang up and try to work in these directions. This is what I'd like to say.
Thank you very much.
But then actually, I think it's quite interesting on the European perspective that, of course, we were always proud, and it was fantastic achievement to have the ERC Council and the global European grants, but then recently 2 countries just excluded themselves from this process, and of course they're paying very dear role. So, sorry, very dear price for this. So we can see both directions. So just things going in both directions, globalization, but then just segmentations as well.
That's a very good point. I would love to see Professor Wu's point on this controversial topic.
Yes, so let me go twist it a little bit and go to the second part of these questions, like about how this process contributes to address the urgent problems of humanities. So my logic is a little bit twisted because I will talk about a global problem first, and then how it impacts the global technology and how we benefit from it. So the global problem which we face last is obviously the COVID, right? And so the whole world had to be united to fight against it. And somehow it raised opportunity to technology that we might have not think about before. So when COVID came, we have vaccine, and then every month we have a new variant, right, with all the terrible names. And so we are very scared. So for each variant, we have to, think of a new vaccine and so on and so forth. And it seems to take forever. But then there is a new technology, like a new kind of thinking is maybe we can use AI and machine learning to learn all the possible dangerous, variants of that virus. And then once we have that, there are labs and companies in the world sort of pouring resources in to make vaccine which may be good for all of these variants at once. And they are doing it right now. And so that is the global, urgency that lead to a new solution. And I think if this direction succeeds, then actually the whole humankind benefit greatly from it, because there's no reason that we stop at COVID, right? We can treat any other diseases that way. And so that is, how, the urgency push us to the limit that we find a new solution, and that will affect us globally.
Fantastic points. So globalization, in my opinion, really helped to address some urgent problem for humanities, whether it's water, food, energy, or technology digitalization. I would love to have Professor Chase to conclude on this benefit or challenges we're facing.
Thank you. And it's really wonderful to be here and to be on this panel. So I believe that in order to realize the problem and in order for our global community of scientists and technologists to be able to address problems like COVID, like the climate crisis, we really need an entity which helps to bring scientists together across the world. And one of the things that I see that is one of the most promising prospects is platforms that are able to unite scientists and scientific communities from around the world. So we are starting to have computing platforms, for example, based on the Jupyter platform, which is a certain technical kind of platform, which have sophisticated machine learning and AI on the back end, many tools like Scientific Python and IPython. But on the front ends and also on the back ends, they have different data sources coming in. Some of the data sources will have differing levels of privacy. If they're medical data, we require a certain kind of privacy for it. If they're data about the atmosphere, they may not require as many privacy constraints. And the front ends of these platforms will be tailored to various scientific communities. So there are certain scientific communities, like the computer scientists, who are very proficient and who can deal with more technical front ends. There will be other communities that are not as trained in data science and computer science who will need low-code, no-code front ends, which enable them to get onto the platform. I believe it is only when we have these platforms, and they are currently being developed, when we have these open scientific platforms, we will be able to come together as a global community and work on problems like the climate crisis. Right now, we at Berkeley are starting to work with Vin University on using machine learning to create better metal organic frameworks to pull carbon dioxide out of the air. We will be able to do that kind of thing on these platforms. We will be able to come up with biomedical advances where we are all working together and can benefit from the data sources and the progress. So I believe that when we create a global, open scientific platform, this will really accelerate our ability as scientists and technologists to bring global efforts together to solve these urgent problems.
That's wonderful. Thank you so much. I think the globalization is really accelerating the technology transfer, science transfer. In the meantime, it's also creating competition among different nations. So the process of this technology, science transfer, and increase the competition on the global scale will really give a different perspective on how we deal with global crisis, from climate to food shortage, energy, disease, and AI adoption. So Professor Morale, from your point of view, how do you think we should really address the technology transfer and the international competition to protect the intellectual property, in the meantime, to accelerate the benefit to humanities?
Yeah, I think that's really when we are talking about globalization, when we are talking about trying to work together on one or several important problems, I mean, the problem of intellectual properties have to be really addressed. And that's not a trivial one. It's a very difficult one, because if you bring, many scientists working together, coming from different areas, from different institutes and so on, trying to solve the intellectual property is going to be difficult. I mean, we can see it right now, where we are not talking about globalizations. I mean, we are not working within the framework of globalizations. Always, when you have discovery, you have contentions and so on. So I think we will have to work on address this issue of intellectual property and how we can manage intellectual property at a global scale. And that, I think, is a very difficult problem.
Thank you. Professor Novel, do you have anything to add on that perspective?
I think you asked just very complex question, not even complicated, but complex question. And it has so many facets that it's really difficult even to know where to start, because the problem of globalization brings a lot of issues for the patent protection and to general technology developments, which impedes the technology development. Like I was lucky to be at the start of the development of the advanced 2D materials, and for a decade at least, you could see this exchange of ideas basically bouncing between different labs. So you accommodate technology from one lab, develop it further, you transfer it to another lab, and then it just travels around almost by itself, covering the Earth very quickly. Of course, when it comes to technology, modern technologies are so complex that it's so difficult to figure out what was the key invention. So we basically in our technologies we used so many different inventions at once, and that, if you remember, that was part of the issue for our council, because you start to digest and dissect one technology, and you see so many key contributions, and you basically want to give prize to everyone. So then where do you stop yourself? So that's the issue of globalization. It's of course it's a nice problem to have for us, but when it comes to the patents law, then it becomes a big issue, and I think it becomes more and more complex, and complex systems usually don't work. But so maybe we need to think about some new systems in the future. But of course, at the same time, we see that that those technologies help to improve the quality of life, saving people life when you are prepared to share them. So we've been discussing the issue of Singapore, which adopted the membrane technology for water desalination really quickly, and that's the technology which has been developing globally, and it was adapted in Israel some time ago. So now we have several countries in the world which use this global technology to supply fresh water basically for the whole country, and there is absolutely no reason why this technology cannot be adopted globally. So it's the favorite topic for Dan Schachman to talk about, that these days you can buy a Russian nuclear submarine. You just, rather than transferring cocaine from Colombia, you replace the silos with the membrane technology. You just bring it to the coast of any African country, and you supply fresh water enough for at least a city, maybe for the whole country. So the technology is reasonably developed, that if we, I think it's in many cases it just impeded artificially. So if we allow it to float even more freely globally, I think we will see much faster progress.
That's a good point. I agree. We live in a complex world. The complexity will only increase as we move forward, because whether it's a climate change, food crisis, or AI, this is going to just increase the complexity. So for a person who has worked in both university in the Silicon Valley, UC Berkeley, and Microsoft, I'd love to get Jennifer's view on how to deal with complexity, and technology transfer.
Okay, thank you. Well, first, I have to agree with my colleagues that the IP landscape is very complex. There are different IP laws. If you're patenting something in the US, you can patent it in the US and globally, but if you're doing it globally, there's different patent law, different processes in different countries, and there are also different cultures around patenting and around what is fair use of advances, and it really is different culturally. One of the great things about computer science is that a lot of it has been very open, so there is a lot of open source, and that really enables technology transfer. A lot of the basic framework is available to everybody, and I think as we see machine learning become more important in making advances in different fields, this is going to be incredibly useful for us, because some of that might be open and available to everyone. Also, as someone who's moved back and forth, I spent the first 10 years of my career as a professor, and then I spent 23 years at Microsoft, and now I've been back in academia for 3 years. I think that the porosity now between academia and industry, for example, Von is at Yale, but he's also at the Vin Group. That porosity is really helping with tech transfer, because as you go back to the university, a lot of the new technology, the students learn about what the needs are, and this is done on more of an open scale and on more of a global scale. We have students from all over the world, and so this allows us to transfer the basic knowledge, which then leads to the technologies, not only in the country in which those students get their PhDs or their bachelor's or master's, but also when they go back to their home countries. So I think that this is a really useful aspect of it, is this industry university partnership, where a lot more people are partially at one and partially at the other.
Jennifer, can I ask you a simple question? Money. So so you completely avoid it. So how do the money work here? So you have, I mean, we all use those pre-trained models, and to pre-train a model in AI, it takes you hundreds of millions of dollars, probably at least, probably more these days. Who pays for it?
Honestly, I think that the governments should start to pay for it more.
No, but they would.
No, I believe that there should be a fabric that, I mean, honestly, you know, I've talked to people in DC, in Washington, DC, about the fact that we should have more infrastructure that is available to everybody. We have, you know, who pays for the roads? You know, who pays for these kinds of things? So that element of it is there. And then I think also university and academic partnerships are really, really, are really important there.
So basically for everyone, what Jennifer is saying, that very, very soon we will have on our tax list, there is a special AI tax. So we were all going to pay for the pre-training of the models from our money, which is probably a useful thing to do.
I think that would not be a bad idea if governments or if philanthropists started taking this on as something that is necessary infrastructure for dealing with the world's most urgent problems and for doing it on a global scale.
Yeah, that's a good debate. I agree, money is a concern. Take the example of OpenAI large language model. Microsoft paid the bill. So that is, it is a challenge for everyone. We are running a little bit late. So I just want to ask a last question, and how we actually work with developing countries, especially when money is a concern. And Bob and Leslie, you probably have a lot of experiences. Can you just add a brief, share your perspective? How do working with developing nations?
Yes, so actually that's a question I thought about a lot and have some really working experience there. So about technology to the developing country, I think it's not only important, but it's probably our only chance. I am talking as a Vietnamese citizen here, because there was industrial reforms before that changed the world and make certain country richer and more advanced than the other. And country like Vietnam missed all of that because of historical and geographical reason. But now we're sort of ready to take part in this technology reform, because as Jennifer said, in this technology reform, most of the things are open, like all the ideas are out there. You just need the quality people to get it and then do the product. So I am heading a small unit here, research unit here at VinGroup, and we have about like 100 people, most of them homegrown, a few PhD from the US, but in 2-3 years we can do some product which is comparable to the international standard. For instance, we do the virtual assistant in the VinFast car in Vietnamese, and in every parameters it matched the one we bought from abroad for English version. So it is possible. and the only thing we need is a quality human resource. And that is, that's why we have this conversation here as VinUni, because that's where we need to, start this thing.
Leslie, do you want to add anything?
Well, I suppose more generally, at one time, almost all of science was done in one continent, Europe, and since then, many other countries have learned how to do science, so globalization must be possible. I suppose the general question is whether to do science at a high level, is it the case that in each field there has to be one or two big centers, and you can't do it in small centers? So obviously it depends on the field, but certainly in my field, in my experience, so in my younger days, I worked in England, but I worked in a field which was really centered in North America. And I traveled to the United States once a year to the conference, and that was quite adequate to keep in touch. So in my experience, so doing certain kinds of science far away from the main centers is quite feasible.
Okay, that's fantastic. Thank you. Now we are open for the audience to ask questions. Anyone?
Hi, so thank you for a very fruitful conversations. So I have a question for Professor Novoselov. As you mentioned, a very interesting point about science can and will survive and prosper in the next 200 and 300 years. So my question is going to be, it's a little bit philosophical, but how do you define science in your terms?
So science, as distinguished from the engineering, is basically something which you cannot define. So we study physics, chemistry, biology, computer science, in math in the university. You get out, you read those books, you know all the formulas, and then you start doing your PhD postdoc, and then you suddenly realize that what you learned is useless to do science, because science is to expand the frontier of knowledge, and you basically need to produce something which is completely unknown to the humanity right now. And then you are basically, you don't have any recipe in which direction to dig and how hard to push, so what are the recipes, and then and the only thing which you can do is to learn from the best and figure out the tricks how to put nature in the position that it suddenly just uncover some new knowledge. So there is a famous saying from Piotr Kapitsa, who got his Nobel Prize for superfluid helium, and for him it was easy. So he studied with Rutherford in Cambridge, and for him the trick was one order of magnitude lower in temperature, a new effect. So, but that's simple. So we just okay, guys in the collider, so they also know, okay, we just go one order of magnitude in power, just spend another 100 billion, and then you get a new particle. For us, people who don't have those budgets and who cannot go much lower in temperature anymore, what are the tricks? You have to figure out yourself.
Great.
Good morning. My name is Antu from PricewaterhouseCoopers, PwC. Thanks very much for the sharing today. It is very interesting, and it's great that we're talking about globalization in a country like Vietnam, because obviously we understand that Vietnam is still a developing country, and our science and technologies are obviously not as advanced as many countries in the world or even in Asia, right? But do you still see some strengths or advantages of the scientists in Vietnam compared to countries like Japan or Korea? And if our scientists would like to collaborate with the more well-known scientists in the world, what are some of the basic things or some of the basic steps you would recommend them to do? And how would they be able to promote themselves or market themselves to the world of science and technology? Thank you.
Okay, that's a wonderful question. First of all, I want to say that VinFuture was a postdoc in my lab when, in 1998 or something? Okay, so I benefited from this amazing Vietnamese mathematician already at Microsoft in 1998. And really, I think that that is the key. The key is that talent is everywhere. Talent is in every country, okay? My mother could not add fractions, and I won the highest award in the world in applied mathematics. So really, talent is everywhere. It doesn't depend on your background. And that is why it is so incredible that Mr. and Madam Pham have set up Vin University, because that is how we collaborate. We know that talent is everywhere. We are trying to set up partnerships between my institution, the University of California at Berkeley, and Vin University to work on mitigating climate change using machine learning and chemistry. We want to work with Vin University on that because talent is global.
Professor Mora, you want to add anything? Talents, just Costa talked about the talents, how important it is.
Okay, I really agree. There is one thing, I'm coming from Africa. I mean, last week I was in Africa. And there's one thing that you start to realize is, you have two different worlds. You have the world where you have a lot of natural resources, but with no knowledge, basically, and a world with starving for natural resources and with all the knowledges. And I was, so in terms of globalizations, how do you really fix this? How do you solve these problems? Okay, because there's a huge departure between the two worlds. And as you said, talent, yes, is everywhere, okay? But in order to apply your talents, it's not everywhere. I mean, you can apply your talents in a specific place, university and so on. But if you don't have university nearby, it's not. But I was really, for me, I came to the point that we have these problems where between natural resources, which is located, for instance, in Africa. In Ghana, I went, you have tons of lithium, And so countries are coming, I'm not going to talk about the countries, but they are coming and take all the lithium, put that in a truck, goes to the ports, and this is being shipped away, and it's going to be used elsewhere, okay? And so I think we have problems to solve which are beyond this, the way we address it right now, I think.
Let me echo maybe what Professor Monroe just said. So of course, talents are definitely everywhere, but unfortunately, they have to be nurtured, just as you said, and they have to be brought up to standard and really sharpened properly. And that's the role of the universities, not only as the educational center, but also as the intellectual center. You basically need the environment, and that's why you really need maybe 20, 30 years before you grow up a scientific school. So what is important, not only the university, but the scientific school, and then you can start producing some exciting results. So there is a real story. I won't call the names here, but then when science minister come to meet peasants, and those peasants ask him, well, how many higher degree educations do you need to get to become a science minister? And he says 3. The problem is that the first one needs to be taken by your grandfather, the second by your father, and the third by yourself. So it's unavoidable, unfortunately.
That's a fantastic answer. Thank you, Kostya. Do we have more questions from the audience? Yes, please.
Yeah, Dr. Sedong Huang, thank you so much. And now I have to interrupt you because I am not only receiving the questions from the offline audiences here, but right now in the online platform of the VinFuture Prize 2022, I received thousands of questions for all you guys to answer. But now I would like to send one of the questions for the Dr. Sedong Huang, the moderator of the session, and he have not received any questions from your panelists. So now I will ask you a question from the audience on online platform. When working with a team, how do you handle the disagreements or conflicts from the very diverse and multinational team? Wow, it is an interesting question, and it's so true, right? When you work in a team, so that many disagreements and the conflict. So how do you handle that?
That's a great question. I think that is universally true, whether it's a developing country or developed nation. So I think the way we approach this is really take perspectives from different angle. Really, you need to understand what is you are trying to achieve, what is you can achieve, and what kind of talents you have that can be grounded. So if we consider those 3 factors, you can make a good decision that can get buy-in from every people, even if they have disagreement. So that's my learning lessons from working at Microsoft for nearly 30 years. We are approaching the problem that can deliver product to impact everyone on the global basis. So this is a huge challenge. We're still learning, trying to do a better job. But I'm sure everyone, you can check with all of them. They have a tremendous wisdom. They just shared some of the perspectives. You can follow up with the online forum. And VinFuture, this is really a fantastic platform, not only for Vietnam, but for the whole world. Thank you.
Thank you so much, everybody. Please give it up for the first panelist here with our first topic. And I think that with that advice, all of you guys here, the future scientists, they can find the way to dedicate their entire life to science, and especially about the globalization in science and technology. One more time, thank you so much for all the professors here with us today. And now it's time for us to come to the second topic. And would you please return to your seat? And Professor Jennifer, please remain on the stage because you are one of the members that will discuss with the second topic today. Thank you one more time. Thank you. Thank you, Professor Novoselov, Professor Gerard Muru. Thank you, Professor Buhavan and Professor Valiant, and Dr. Sedong Huang. Professor Jennifer Tuoche is with the members of the second topic today. Ladies and gentlemen, the female scientists from the different countries and scientific backgrounds will share in the panel discussion. In addition to the success stories of each person in their field, scientists also share the inspiration for the young generation of female scientists to be more motivated, more confident, and persistent in their actions. And this session today will have the perspective of a male scientist, Professor Pisano. As a dean, he will share how the scientific community can improve the working conditions and environment for female scientists, thereby increasing the number of the women ones. Now here we come with the topic number 2. Video, please.
Owning their standpoint to mark down life stories, women nowadays choose their high-value patterns which were impossible. The undefeatable spirit motivated them through hardships and obstacles, as well as social and family barriers. With determination, perseverance, and the urge to constantly dream and absorb knowledge from a diverse perspective. And today, female scientists are making their way to assert and pursue both roles and positions in society. The harsh but remarkable path of women scientists will be brought up into
this panel discussion.
Ladies and gentlemen, and to come to the second topic today, I would like to have the participation of all the audiences here. Can you use your mobile phone and access a quick survey by scanning the QR code? And the goal is for each participant to choose only one option that you believe is the biggest barrier of the female scientist in the career. And now, would you please use your mobile phone? And here we come with the QR code on the screen. And you will scan it and choose only one option. Gentle reminder. Only one option for this question, and that is the statement for the panelists here to discuss about the topic, stories of how female scientists overcome the challenges to achieve success. And now, it's time for us to welcome to the panel here. I would like to invite to the stage Professor Anta Schut, Professor Albert Pisano, Professor Jennifer Tuche is right now on the stage, Professor Monica Kota, and Professor Thục Quyên Nguyen. And Professor Thục Quyên Nguyen is also the moderator of this session. So professors, please welcome all of you to the VinFuture Prize 2022. Welcome on the main stage. Please be seated. Thank you. And all the audiences, I would like you to assess a quick survey by scanning the QR code and choose one option that you believe is the biggest barrier for the female scientist when they face in the distinguished career in terms of science. Thank you so much. And now we have the result, and the results will be displayed live on the screen for all the audiences and to interact, and the professors here to discuss. And now, Professor Thục Quyên Nguyen, please.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone, and thank you for being here. And I will be moderate this discussion. And thank you very much, Jennifer. The element of surprise. Can we get the result from the survey, please?
We have 8 criteria for the audiences to choose. And now the results here, please, Professor.
So this is basically the survey and the answer from young people and also more senior people and also people from different background. And we also have the largest percentage, 30%. So basically the social, culture, and traditional barrier. And so this is very interesting, but you look at the list here, those are the challenges that number of us have to face. So with that, I would like to start with the first question. So basically about some opinion of audience about what they think is a big barriers for female scientists. So let me now ask our panelists to share their own experience and how did they overcome those obstacles. And so the first question I would like to ask is Arta. You were born and raised in South Africa. You started your career in South Africa and you moved to Australia in 2020. What challenges you experienced in South Africa and recently in Australia, and how did you overcome those challenges?
Thank you very much, Gwen, and everyone here. It's a delight to be on the panel and to be in beautiful Hanoi. Yes, you are right. So I was born and grew up in South Africa, and I think having a perspective also here in Vietnam from low and middle income countries, It is a very different environment in terms of opportunities, access to quality education. But I do think in terms of barriers, it's very different in high income versus lower resource settings. I think in countries where there are not that many resources, you often become more creative, make use of opportunities. When anything comes your way, you take it up. And I think it's often those individuals, and I'm referring also to many students that I had in South Africa and still have, it's those ones that really take the opportunity when it comes their way, despite very significant challenges, and just persevere, despite all of the different things coming your way. Specifically as a female scientist, I do have to say that I experience more barriers in a high-income setting in Australia than what I've experienced in South Africa. There were much more openness in terms of gender balance for work opportunities, for promotion, for awards, etc. Whereas I find in Australia, perhaps, you know, we always hear about the old boys clubs. And I do think those sort of challenges are much more significant and systematic. And those opportunities will need to change. And I think we need to really face this and make sure that our voices are heard, also in the funding system.
So thank you very much. And now I would like to ask Monica. So I work in Brazil a number of times, and one thing I observed that there are many, like over 50% of chemists are females. But based on knowing you mentioned that's not the case in Brazil in physics. And so could you please share with us your experience and barrier that you face in Brazil? And also, is there any reason why you have much less female in physics as compared to chemistry?
Thank you, Gwen. Well, first, good morning. It's really nice to be here, and but particularly to share these experiences on female issues. Physicists are mostly men all over the world. Particularly in our faculty, we're 10% women. So I didn't realize as much the issues gender puts in in physics as general, like when I was a student, but later on, when I got to faculty, I started to realize that very quickly. And also I learned from my own experience. For example, when I became a mother, I was already in the faculty, and I realized how much your career depends on coffee breaks and committees chatting, after work and so on. And I didn't have time because I have to keep, my commitment to my students and my lab and my kids. So you have to run away. So you start to learn to probe your environment, and environment is really important, this issue. For example, if you look at the statistics, we lose. We start with 40% women in undergrad, and we get to 10% at higher levels. So we lose people in physics because mostly of the way we present physics as very hard stuff, and women are more, connected to social issues in general. It's not a stereotype, but it's in general it is. So we have to learn, and something I learned over my, several decades now in the field, is that you have to take care of your environment. So you have to have a diversity and representation in all moments. So as to, for example, care about if you have like a proposal or something like you have subject to a grant, you have to have equity rules, you have to think about how maternity impacts life in women and so on. This is not only for physics, but in physics, it's really hard because we don't have as many role models. So this is one of the big issues I learned in my career. And I think we can improve that by taking care of the environment, as it was already told by your panelists in the first. Okay.
Can I make a comment on that? I'm surprised I'm on this panel. I didn't know I was going to be here, which Al said to me, well, talk about, feeling unprepared, which, and you wing it. My PhD is in physics as well, from Princeton, a long time ago, 79 to 83. And in the 4 years I was there, no other woman got her PhD in physics. They all dropped out or they took longer. Actually, the graduate student advisor, I was married at that time to someone different from whom I'm married to now. And the graduate student advisor apparently told all the faculty that none of them should take me and my husband on as graduate students because there was no way that two people were going to get jobs in the same place in mathematical physics, in the same city in mathematical physics. And my reaction was, well, he's wrong. You know, and 4 years out of grad school, we both had 7 tenured offers. But honestly, I think that one of the things is that sometimes you feel insecure inside because you don't have as many role models, but your outsides don't have to look like your insides. Okay, and I found this talking to a lot of men as well, who might feel some insecurities themselves, but don't voice it. But somehow what had happened was that the projection of others onto women was different than their projection onto men. And so I have mentored over 200 women over the years, and what I tell them is that just, do not betray all that you are feeling inside. You have brilliant ideas. You are here having already overcome a lot of discrimination. So on average, you're better than the men around you because you've had harder natural selection. So just act as if you are not insecure, because there's no reason for you to be insecure. And so very often, just let your outsides not betray all the insecurities that you're feeling inside. And this is true for men out there who are sitting there who may feel that they don't deserve to be where they are. You almost surely do deserve to be where you are.
Thank you very much, Jennifer. And now the panel will share with us their journey to get where they are today. And I would like to start with Monica. You are the first female president of the Brazilian Material Research Society. Could you please share with us your journey to get where you are today, and who has inspired you to pursue a career in science?
Okay, starting from the last question, I had no really female role models in Brazil, and also there's a barrier of the language because English was not that spoken at the time. So it was kind of a family supported thing. So I always talk to my students, and I noticed that whenever they are there, someone important push them over the barriers. And that's one thing I always try to tell them: do not, if you have help, it's okay, everybody helps. So it's no shame in being helped, right? So my parents, who had high school level, they encouraged both daughters to study a lot. And I also found my relief in the sci-fi books, which I found in public library when I was a kid. So that's I think, the last question. Regarding role models now, yes, I am the first female because there are not that many females, so it ends up being almost the same person. But I didn't realize I was a role model until recently, like you're telling, because I just decided what I wanted to be after a few years, tried to fit in models that I didn't like, but people expected me to do, and I gave up and I said, what the hell, I'm gonna do what I like most. And I supported lots of students, even not my own. Whoever gets to my lab gets helped, gets something back. And I think that eventually permeated through the society. So last conference, MRS conference, we had 2 female chairs. And one of them, I know her for a long time, but she never told me, said, Monica, when I was a student, you were just hired at faculty and I went to a school and you showed me your lab. I was in university where they only did theory, and I saw you in your lab and I said, wow, I can make it. And I switched my career because of that. I didn't realize until we were talking, So this small examples, this care for not having microaggressions, having a sound environment, I think it's something that I really fought for, and somehow it got acknowledged at this level, right? But that's the most honest answer I can give you, Quinn.
So next, I would like to ask Alta, so could you please share with us your journey to where you are today?
Yes, thank you, Gwen. So I think many scientists here would share the similar stories, having difficult circumstances when they grew up. And I think it's quite remarkable that often it's not necessarily those who were in the prestigious schools from young ages onwards who really come into positions of being on Nobel Prize winners, etc. So I won't necessarily have to share that, but I'm the fourth of 5 kids, and my 3 older siblings are all boys, and they're all into science from young ages. Although we were not really privileged at all, it sort of set me up never thinking of myself as a female in science. I just love doing it, and growing up, it was something that was of interest. So I'm more into health sciences, they're more into physical sciences, so maybe there is some gender bias there. But making use of that opportunities and never having that specific, perhaps unconscious bias that we have these days is that for some reason we all think men should score higher on this or that. I think it's something that we probably need to discuss in more detail also here. But yes, so my journey was, I was really having good role models, although some of them have been men. And that's why it's great that we have Al also here on the panel today, because they open doors. You know, it's about these creating opportunities. And if it weren't for that, I've also been very fortunate to have been president of the International Society of Hypertension, the first from a low middle income country and only the second woman. And that just shows you, you know, if you focus on the science and you focus on doing quality work, some way you will be persistent and you will get there. And I think if there's one message I can give is that just keep at it and keep pushing, you will get there.
Thank you very much. And now I would love to also hear from Jennifer, because you have kind of like not traditional path to get to where you are today, right? And so please, could you please share with us your story?
Okay, so I have a really untraditional path. As I mentioned in the previous in the previous session, my mom couldn't even add fractions. Brilliant woman, but she couldn't add fractions. My grandma got married around the age of 10. My parents were both from Tehran. You know, so that was an unconventional background. I dropped out of high school and lived on the streets of New York City for a while. Then I went to a high school for dropouts and graduated. I was very lucky in that at that time, in those ancient times, if you scored well on tests, you got into college anyway, and I was a very good test taker. I did biology and physics as an undergrad. I did physics as a grad student. I became a professor of mathematics. And then after doing that, I left to go to a tech company, to go to Microsoft 10 years later, because they offered me to build an interdisciplinary lab. I really wanted to do interdisciplinary work. Everyone thought I was crazy to do that, because there was no mathematics, there was no physics, which is what I did, and I didn't do computer science. I think I just take risks, and actually, I think a lot of women in science take risks. They take risks just in going into science, because there are a lot of people who tell you you shouldn't be doing that. I hate when people tell me I shouldn't be doing something, honestly. I just hate it. And, you know, also opportunity always seems to come at the most inopportune times. So just grab that brass ring. I mean, when Microsoft came along, it seemed like a crazy thing for me to do at the time. And I think a lot of it is act as if, as I mentioned, you know, I always felt totally insecure, because when I went to Microsoft, I knew no computer science, and and then I started doing biology and I started doing economics and these other things. Now I'm starting to do chemistry. And it's okay to be a novice, especially if you tell people, I don't know this. And it sounds like I'm confident. I don't feel like I'm confident. I feel very insecure, but I actually voice that. So, anyway, so I have this crazy story. Now I went back to academia. I went to Berkeley. We're forming the first new college at Berkeley in over 50 years. I do things in spite of discomfort, and not because I don't feel discomfort, but in spite of discomfort. And I embrace risks. I think one of the hard things for people today, most of the students at Vin University probably have done very, very well their whole lives to get into Vin University. It's okay to take chances and do things that at which you are not at all sure you're going to succeed, because that's how you do great work. And do that even if you're feeling insecure. Most people I know who are really smart and accomplished have felt insecure. So that little voice in your head telling you that you're not good enough is almost surely wrong.
Thank you. So now I would like to ask Al, could you please share with us your journey to where you are today?
Okay, thank you very much. Let me speak a little bit about the growth of women and minorities in engineering. So just a few seconds about some facts on the ground. I've been the dean of a growing engineering school for 10 years. There were 168 ladder rank faculty when I joined. In 2 years, there will be 315. When you grow like that, you cannot say, I'm only going to take one segment of the population. You need all that talent from everywhere. The most important message I want to bring to all the women here is that the need for more women in science and technology is not just your problem. It is not right to say that you must take down all the barriers. You must be embraced and be made part of the system. So there are many people, and we've spoken about how you feel insecure. There is an issue. There are loud and overt ways, and quiet and subtle ways of trying to tell someone you should not be here. And it is the job of the men to disassemble that just as much as it is the job of the women to fight through. So let's talk about partnership on that. So I'll just close by saying you have to show that the partnership is there. You can't talk it, you have to do it. So unless the leadership of the organization brings the women together and listens to them without assigning the work back for them to solve it, right? That's a nasty trick, right? You have 3 ideas. Oh, fine, you must all now do it. So you've been punished for having a good idea. No, that idea has to be taken up by the rest of the community, and that solution worked.
Well, thank you very much, Al. And now I would like to ask both Al and Jennifer, and in the position of dean, because for some of you, so you may not aware, for in the US, so at the faculty, when we have some problem, challenge, issue, we come talk to our dean, right? And ask for help. And so first with Jennifer, in position as the dean, so what are typical female faculty that come to you with certain challenge or barrier or thing that they need help with? So we would like to hear what kind of issue that they come to you for.
So I think honestly, some of the positions are not that different than the positions that, even when I wasn't a dean, that women came to me with. Some of it obviously is work-life balance. issues, a lack of understanding by the people around them of their work-life issues. Some of it, honestly, I notice without people bringing it to me. I notice, over the years, I've noticed salary discrepancies. I've noticed, I'm not assigning this to any particular place that I've worked or the places at which my mentees have worked. I've noticed that people were not encouraged to go up for tenure or promotion as quickly as I thought they should have been. Even when I talked to their managers and said, this person is ready to move to this next level. So I've seen a lot of these kinds of things. Truthfully, the hardest thing for me is to advocate for myself. Really, really hard. I'm known for advocating vociferously for other women, and yet I have a harder time doing it for myself. And I have to remind myself, wow, I just gave these women I was mentoring advice to stand up for themselves, so I better do it for myself also. So these are the kinds of issues that come to me, but what bothers me more, honestly, are the issues that I notice that nobody has come to me with, and those are the ones that we should try to root out.
Thank you. So Al, could you please share your experience at the Dean and from female faculty in your school that usually come to you with?
Right. So let me offer the background to the answer, which is it's time we recognize what I would call neurodiversity. Different people think different ways. So you could have someone who does not like to argue for themselves and is very brilliant. You could have someone who loves to argue in their own favor, who is brilliant. If you're looking for the brilliant, then you have to accept all the neurodiverse types. That means you need a system that does not systematically bias against them. And that means that the dean has to stand outside the local system in the departments and make by actions confidence in the women that if there is an issue, they can come. So a short story, which is actually 8 days old. A very brilliant young Black woman sent me an email, the phishing kind of email. Oh, I'd like to be able to talk to you about career advice. And your sixth sense goes up like, hi, I think there's more to this than you would say. And so when I brought her in and spoke to her, I quickly found out that one, she'd been here in my school for over 2 years and had not spent much of her startup package. She was not supporting many graduate students, and she wasn't settled yet in her lab. So I said, well, what were instead of saying, hi, why did you screw up? The correct comment is, what in the system was blocking you? And what she said was, and I'll condense it into my words, at a moment of extreme negotiation in the startup package, she got talked out of requesting enough money to buy the laser that she needed to do the experiments to be able to have the grad students do the work. So now I'm saying, wow, 2 years in, what do we do about this? So let's construct a win-win situation. How about, and when I go back, by the way, I got to find the money. How about I inaugurate right here and now the Young Faculty Acceleration Scholarship from the Dean's Office, $150,000, which I'm still looking for, but I will get it within a week, I think. And with that $150,000, you will be the first awardee and you can buy the laser. But I won't stop there. We'll do it again next year. And after you make something like this into a win-win, I believe that the others who may have been talked out of the right packages or given bad advice and are trying to correct course, they will come forward. And by setting a pattern that this kind of correction is expected, then you will see the others who could have solved the problem but sat on their hands, did nothing, they will be engaged. And that's part of what I mean by saying you can't just ask the woman to fight the battle. The system has to engage positively with her and show her that she belongs there and has worth.
Thank you very much, Al, and the rest of the panel. So it's very clear to us that tackling and reducing barriers, improving working conditions for female scientists require long-term effort, right? And also the cross-cooperation between different department level, the university, between male and female colleagues. So each barrier will be different depending on each country, at the point that Jennifer have raised earlier, different culture and as well. So in today's dialogue, what advice do you have for female scientists and especially the young student in the audience? So I would like to start with Monica.
Thanks, Wayne. I think I'll repeat some of what's being spoken here today, but talking to the students, you have to be yourselves. So there is sometimes this word called success. So success means different things for different people. There's neurodiversity in action. So you have to find something that you feel glad about to do, and if conditions permit, because we know, for example, in Brazil, when you're talking about talent being everywhere, we know that children sometimes cannot fulfill their talents because sometimes they don't have a glass frames in their eyes, so cannot read the blackboard in a school. So somebody has to take care of that not to happen. So the conditions provide, a substrate where the talent can grow. So if you have these conditions and you have to grasp whatever tools you need, find support. Find support from other females, from male friends. It's important to have males that understand, like Al did here. So there's no shame in being helped, right? This is the first question. Sometimes people say, I have to achieve it by myself. No, nobody does anything by yourself. And try to find this network. Also try to, always be aware of your surroundings. For example, if you are, we are always being struck by stereotypes of all forms. Like when you have a daughter and she says, don't do that because you get your dress dirty, you are making a barrier with a single comment, right? So try to be aware of your surroundings, not to be held by these stereotypes, and also to help others not to be held by these stereotypes. This is something important. So also in your career, if we're talking about careers in science, there are many barriers as well. So you have to have this kind of supportive network where you relate, where you can find someone to cry about whenever something bad happens, but also to get strength to go ahead and try to get to what success means to you, not to other people. So try to know who you are, what makes you tick. That's, I think, the best lesson we can get for life. That's, I think, what I can tell you, the students and the youngsters in the audience.
Thank you very much, Monica. I'm sure they appreciate the advice. And Atta, could you please share some advice you have for our young generation or young students and researchers?
Yes, thanks. I think I can only support what Monica said in terms of role models and mentors. And it's not necessarily the people that you work directly with. We have social media. We have so many ways to connect. We've just had a session on globalization. And these days there are so many new platforms also for women, and not only women, but for young scientists to connect with the world. It's really becoming full of opportunities. I would like to speak specifically on being a mother and having children, and that sometimes, and I suppose it's also different in different cultures, could mean that it's much harder to having a career in science. or in academia for that matter. But I think there are many women who would attest to the fact that it's very possible to be successful in science and to have children. I have 2 teenagers, and nobody warned me about being a mother of teenagers. But it is really, when you have a supportive environment, and you know, there's no secret to success. It's going to be hard to balance everything, but it is possible to do that. And making sure that you have a partner who supports you in that process is, I think, has been for me at least, the key to actually doing what I love, but also not working myself to death. My children will pull me out of that and ensure that I have some other balance. And I think, therefore, when you have mentors, it's important to have male and female mentors who can also support you in those aspects. Because these days we have paternal leave as well as we have maternal leave, so men play a very different role at home, and that society is changing. So that's why I thought some of the responses earlier in terms of barriers in the system, social barriers for women is a major problem, but also maternity leave, taking care of children and that sort of duties. We have to work around that, and it is possible to have children and be successful in science. That's my message.
Thank you. So Jennifer, what advice would you like to have for these young generations?
So I really think you should believe in yourselves. When you do well at something, I would always work hard, okay? And when I would do well, I would think, it's because I worked hard and because I'm lucky. It just kept happening again and again, which made the probability of luck lower and lower, but still, I always believed it's because I work hard and I'm lucky. And you know, maybe you should not listen to that voice that tells you that the only reason you're succeeding is something other than the fact that you're exactly where you're supposed to be. You are succeeding because you are good. The other thing I would say is give voice to your great ideas. There are ideas inside of us, and I have found that those who are insecure, who don't have role models, often will not articulate those ideas as well as those who have more role models. There was a woman who I encouraged to interview for a position, and then she didn't get the position in my lab, and I was really surprised. But even when I interviewed her, when I asked what she imagined she would be doing 5 or 10 years hence, she told me what she was doing plus epsilon. And she called to ask me if I would tell her why she didn't get the job. And I said, just look at your record. What would somebody who was more confident say that someone with that record was going to be doing in 5 or 10 years? You must have ideas inside of you. I am sure you do. Articulate them. And, you know, she's now a professor at a top computer science department. She said she went to her next job interview and she said that and she got the job. So, you know, in your actions and what you articulate, give voice to those dreams. Most people, when they have scientific dreams, do not know every step of how they're going to get there. They have those dreams and they go towards them step by step. So, you know, act as if you're more confident than you may feel. Know that I am deeply insecure, but that I give voice to those dreams, and somehow I'm just lucky and I'm lucky and I'm lucky and I'm lucky. And you'll probably be lucky and lucky and lucky too. So give voice to those.
Thank you very much. And Al, could you please share some advice for the young students?
Sure, I'd be happy to. So first off, everything you heard so far is absolutely spectacular. So let me offer a thought that complements and integrates into some things each of you have said. The very thing that you feel makes you different and causes you the fear of success is frequently your secret and most powerful strength. Everything that makes you feel you might not belong is probably your secret and most powerful success approach. So the important thing is to integrate a little bit is harness that energy and look for the men and the other people in leadership positions who love people who do that. If you connect to the right people and you celebrate and utilize what makes you different, you will create a space in your institution specifically for you. But think of it this way, you were hired because a group of people said, you have the potential to do that. You've already been given the signal. So take those things, don't worry that they make you different, they are your special powers.
Thank you very much, Al. And I would like to have just a few words of advice for the Vietnamese student and the young student. So I grew up in small villages in Vietnam, and 16 years of my life without electricity, drinking water, food, and clothes. And I came to America at the age of 21 with a few words of English. And also there are a number of people told me that research not for everyone. You should focus learning your English. And so what I would like to advise you that do not let anyone to stop you from achieving your dream, and dream big and work hard for that, everything possible. And have a positive attitude in life. The more people put you down, use it as a motivation to get where you want to be. And ask for help. We heard that message throughout the panel discussion today. There are no written rule that you have to be alone. If you knock a number of doors, there will be one open out for you, and that happened to me. So with that, I would like to thank all the panelists and also you. And just one thing, treat people the way you want to be treated and be respectful of each other, and together, and hopefully through the VinFuture Foundation, we can make a meaningful impact and help change the world. Thank you very much. So now I am assured that my colleague here will be delighted to answer any question that we have from the audience. So please raise your hand and we will pass you the microphone. So have one in front here, please. In the front row. Yeah.
Right in the front row center, right there. Not where you expected it to come from.
So the question to Professor Pisano: how does it feel to be in the physics department from the beautiful parallel universe, which is dominated by female physicists?
So could you just repeat that one more time?
Right. So yeah, it's difficult to hear on the stage. How does it feel for you to be in the physics department from the parallel beautiful universe, which is dominated by female scientists?
Oh, you're with 4 women.
Yes.
He's an honorary woman, and we're all honorary men.
So that's
I'll offer an answer. I'll offer an answer, which is I have no fear of estrogen whatsoever, and value the fact that all humans have different ratios of this, and some have a little higher of one, and some have a little higher of testosterone. So I see it as, no, we all have some of the same traits that we share. Think of it this way, I could have stayed in my seat because she was the fourth speaker, but I came up here anyway.
So we have one question in the front row on the left here. Yeah. We have it coming.
No, but people are.
I can't hear you online.
Good morning, fascinating discussion. I'm asking you this question for my twin 14-year-old daughters. Today it's been said that the new universities are Microsoft and Google. In fact, you can get in and work at Google without a college degree. Further, the entrepreneurial path suggests that maybe that $250,000 I'm going to spend at Princeton might be better served at my own startup. I want you to put your atypical hat on and think about some of the unconventional pathways that are available to my two daughters now as they look to Princeton and Harvard and maybe Google or Amazon as the proving ground for their talent.
I'll take a crack at that. Okay. All right, so the background answer is deans, when they do pro bono, invite sophomore and senior and junior high school students to their office and say things like, I run the biggest school of engineering on the West Coast, ask me any question you want. So the background is, I've been asked that 10 times already, so I'm going to give you an answer. It depends on what you want to do. All of those routes are perfectly fine. Yes, they have different prices. But if you want to be someone whose primary job is creating new knowledge and teaching other people how to create new knowledge, then yes, you could work in a research lab, but you could also work in academia. If your goal is to say, I would like to benefit society by creating meaningful jobs for other people, the entrepreneur is a great route. So I think when young women and young men ask me this question, the first thing I do is interview them as to what is it you feel you want to do 5 or 10 years from now. If you have an idea for what that is, then you can choose one of those routes.
I've got to say it's a matter of odds. You know, the guy who just sold Figma for $20 billion was a high school intern in my lab. We had like 3 high school interns in the 20 years that I was at Microsoft, and he was one of them. And Peter Thiel gave him some money to drop out when he was a freshman or a sophomore at Brown, and I was very, very upset about it because I thought he's such a smart kid, and look what's happened to him. And it took him 10 years, but you know, he just sold his company for $20 billion. So I guess I was wrong where he was concerned. I was very mad at Peter Thiel for encouraging him to leave to leave college. But odds are that most people who leave college to do a startup or who never go to college to do a startup do not do well. So, you know, use just some basic probability theory. I don't think you want your kids to be doing that. The odds that they're going to be selling their company for $20 billion when they're 30 versus doing a job that they don't like when they're 30, you know, are not in their favor. I would say go to college.
We have a question on the second row in red, and then one in the back there.
Hello, my name is Vance, and I am a very junior group leader at the International Rice Research Institute in the Philippines. And I would like to have a question to the Professor Thuc Nguyen. I see that you are now a very successful professor at the respected university, but you also have an Asian origin. So what are your challenges that you've been facing while you find your way to be a leader at the international levels, at the global scale, and how does you overcome all of that to achieve where you are right now? Thank you very much.
So I have faced many challenges, and first is the language barrier, and then without a good mentor and guidance at students. But one thing that I always have that curiosity, I always have that love to understand how things work around me, and then I keep trying, right? And then so as the scientist, I also face discrimination, but like I mentioned earlier, the more people put me down, I don't get angry. I use it as a motivation to try harder and show people what I can do. And I also eventually learn to reach out to other colleagues, especially scientists who are very successful, and I ask them for advice. So every time I do something new, I always do research. Just say for I teach a new class, I find out who have taught that same class. I asked if I could sit to listen to the lecture. They could share a lecture note with me. They could share advice. And I asked for multiple people. And the same thing, how to run a research group at the young faculty. I look at successful professors at UCSB, and then I asked to join the group meeting to see how they work with their student. And then I develop something for my own. And so that's what I mean, that you are the resources around you. And that's what I always do. And the same thing being part of the VinFuture Foundation, when I agree to help, I also look at all the global foundation and learn about their focus, their mission, their goal, and ask the question, what can we do differently here? And so that always, the approach that I use. Yeah.
Hello, Professor. And firstly, thank you so much for very interesting debate and also very meaningful insight. Also, I have a question here. I think that the Professor Jennifer once mentioned in her speech that the most important thing is give the voice for your great ideas and dare to take risks. And I think that this is true for not only the women leader, but also for even the young student like us. So however, there is one problem, there is one very common problem that the young student and maybe the many women, the woman leader shares is, and I agree that we may have some very great idea, but if we don't know how we are going to articulate it, it's very difficult. It's not just about planning, about ideas, but it's about executing and make it become real. So I want to ask that when you have a good idea, but you don't know how to articulate or execute it, what are some possible options for you, or at least for some young students like me, to take advice or to improve it, or at least to validate whether it is good or not?
All right, so let me ask, how, as a student, can you determine if an idea you have is good or not, and what resources can you use to help you make the decision? Is that a good estimate?
Yes. And how to articulate it, yes?
Yes.
Well, I think sometimes you can start by just trying it out on some close friends, some classmates, and I sometimes start out, I have all these crazy ideas, and I say, I know this is crazy. I take someone who I consider a peer, and I say, this is probably crazy, but I'm thinking maybe we could do this or that. And then I try to co-create with other people. And I try to start articulating it with people I'm comfortable with people I really trust. And, but some of it is just allowing yourself to speak it, For me, that was always the biggest thing, just getting myself to speak it. And you don't come and bring it to a dean immediately, but you bring it to a couple of really trusted friends, and together you do. And then you go to a mentor, and I very much believe in mentorship, mentoring networks. So it's very good if you can be mentored by someone who's just a few years further on than you. And then if it really seems, then maybe they send you on to their mentor. So it's not that it has to be completely polished. just allow yourself to say it. And for me, it helps me to say, this is probably crazy, but what do you think of XYZ?
If I might just add there, firstly, the fact that you stood up and asked that question is already a great sign that you have the courage to speak, even though you may be in a very intimidating audience. So well done on doing that. And then secondly, I fully agree what was just been said. I think creating a safe space, even though it may be other students, but maybe your supervisor, if you're a graduate student, we always say we are seeing whether our idea passes the laugh test. So you present it and see whether other people laugh at you, or maybe think, oh, that may be some creative, crazy idea, but it may just as well work, and you have to voice that. More and more, and it becomes easier, even though people may sometimes think it's crazy, some of them will go through, and that's why we have lots of great ideas implemented today.
Can I join it? Something else, and congratulations for your question here. It's very impressive. In physics, female students usually don't talk much. That's a psychological experiment about it. So it's about creating an environment so they can talk as well. So not on your position, but in the other side of the fence, you have to be creative to make everybody seem comfortable to talk, and sometimes calling out, students or shyer people who don't want to expose themselves, saying it's safe. So this is exactly, but it doesn't mean to be only friends. It might be a more, different environment where you don't know as much as people, but it is important. It is important that you voice your ideas. And I didn't share, but there was an example which I think is brilliant. It's not mine. I heard it from, I think, Beverly Hartline, about when I got two kids. My oldest son was 5. He was very tall, and we have to go to the mall. There was only female and male toilets, right? And I didn't want him to go by himself, so I took him to the female toilet, and some ladies were looking, oh, he's too big to be here. I said, oh, because he's 5. Who do you think designed the toilets in the mall? A man or a female? Right? Now we have gender neutral toilets, we have, family toilets. So this comes from the experiences we share. So it's really important for our society that you call out and give your ideas, even if they're not, they're rough, they're not polished, but, just try to speak up. It's really important.
Thank you. So is there any other question? Yes, on the left here.
So thank you very much for an interesting discussion. I come from a small province in Vietnam, and I'm asking this question for my female cousins and friends. So in Vietnam, there's a common saying from the parents to their daughter that you don't have to study too good, you don't have to study to the high level, because if you study too well, then you will be quite hard to get a husband, because the husband would do not like their wife to overpower them or to be better than them. So what do you think that men and women can do to improve the situation? And this is not talking about to help themselves, but to help the whole community and to change the prejudices of the community.
First of all, your female friend should not want the husband who's going to be intimidated by her. So that's like a great screening right there. Go for the guys who like smart women, okay? My husband is sitting right over there. Raise your hand, Christian. Okay, and it's a great selection. And I think life with smart women, for the guys out there, life with smart women is more fun. It's just more fun, I think. I mean, you should ask my husband. But I think that when the society starts seeing that and having more respect, I mean, actually, I have less respect for a guy who's worried that his smart wife is going to show him up. And I hope that society does too. Leaders don't need to be threatened by that. So I guess, you know, the guy who's worried that his wife's going to show him up is not a leader or something. I don't know.
I can, let me offer a fun retort. For all the men who are afraid of smart women, you come to my office and we'll have a discussion about you must no longer fear estrogen. Get it, guys? It's not anything to be afraid of. And then that may help the situation from the other side.
But maybe it's also good to acknowledge it's not only in this culture. It's been like that in many cultures for many years, and it will change over time. We just have to speak about this. It was the same in Europe. It was the same in many other places where things have changed and moved forward.
And it's improving with ages. I recall my grandmother. My grandmother was the son of Italian immigrants who had no access to school and so on. And she always asked me when I was going to get married, you know, and I said, oh, maybe one day. I don't know. It doesn't matter. But the generations that come are changing. So I see my students now. The relationships are much more equal in quality, right? So you have to be aware that these things changes continuously, and if we make the effort, they will keep changing, and we'll reach someday something extra, you know, very nice to read. So smart women are fine, smart men are fine. We need them, right? So we should look for them. And as all said, it's all a question of chemistry. Neurochemistry, neurotransmitters, hormones, all molecules, you know, like the oxytocin, they call it the love molecule, it's there. So we are being, led by this chemistry in our body, and we have to learn how to modulate it to get the best result, okay?
So what you can go home, all the gentlemen, talk to your grandmother and said, I would like to be with a smart woman. And then for ladies, you can explain to your grandmother that things had changed compared to 50 years ago, and point out many examples of females that have a career and also can raise children and have happy family. And I think slowly things can change. We already seen change. I think we're perfect on time.
One more time, thank you so much for your question. The boy over there, you really break the ice and make us more proud to be women. And you will be the good man in the future because you care about us. You care about the women. You care about your female friends. Thank you so much. And thank you so much for the advice from the panelists here. And now I would love to address one more question from online platform from VinFuture Prize 2022. Yeah, a question for Professor Antas Schut. So you mentioned a lot about the challenges for female scientists. So what are the privileges for being a woman in science world? I think it is a very interesting question.
Yes, there are indeed privileges, and we don't often speak about those. And I do think, you know, diversity is something that's still not appreciated enough. If we all look the same and we all think the same, we will be stuck with the same issues. But being diverse, we've had this reference to what did you call it? Neurodiversity, that's the right nice term for it. So women bring more of that to the table, and that's not even to say female and male, it's also different cultures. We need everyone. Everyone has such different perspectives, and the benefit for me is being the one that thinks a bit differently. I've been invited onto panels where all of them were men, and they were just asking for me to be a woman because I have very different perspectives on the same ideas that they've been working on for years. And that's just something fresh, so you move forward. And for me, that has been a privilege, and I hope to contribute to that going forward.
Sure, thank you so much.
Can I give you one more
Sure.
advantage? It's mentoring women. I mean, it is just, you know, one of the most wonderful things for me is that I've mentored a couple of hundred people, mostly women, not exclusively women. And really, it's a fantastic feeling. And so you have the opportunity to do that as a woman, which I think is
is a real, I mean, I'm sure that Al also mentors women, but I think it's one of the gifts of being a woman scientist.
Thank you so much, Professor Jennifer. And I think that Professor puts out a little bit pressure in the middle of our outstanding female professors here. Thank you so much one more time for all of you sharing that we are so much more confident with our career that we are pursuing. And one more important thing, that the nature of the women with the femininity, the creativity, the charm, so that you prove that you would do the extraordinary work in terms of science. And you motivate us and inspired a lot. One more time, thank you so much for all your messages that you delivered in the second topic, that the stories of how female scientists have overcome all the challenges to achieve success. One more time, thank you so much for the participation of the audience and the professors here. We wish you all the best. And please return on your seat. And we will come to the final topic today. And Professor Monica Cotta, please remain on the stage. Thank you so much, all of our distinguished professors. Ladies and gentlemen, scientific works are invented to solve urgent problems. It is in the developing countries like Vietnam, of cells, that the problems exist, and finding opportunities and solving challenges for scientists in developing country must be discussed in order to find the solution. And it's my pleasure to introduce to you the third topic and the final topic today. Please, video.
Up the opportunity for international integration. Nevertheless, it likewise imposes significant challenges for scientists in growing countries. So what seems to be the original causes? Is it because of the limited budget for science, lack of equipment, modern labs, or the complication of transit progress? What exactly is the role that the commercialization of applied scientific research results plays in that process? And what kind of opportunities exist for scientists in developing countries to overcome impediments to compete with colleagues in developed countries? Now, the speakers will assist us, particularly those in developing countries, with an authentic statement on this issue. Therefore, convey solutions to collaborate and support each other.
Ladies and gentlemen, and discuss the topic, opportunities and challenges faced by scientists from developing countries, I would like to invite to the stage Professor Qureisha Abdul Karim, Professor Amias Kebrib, Professor Daniel Kamen, Professor Ming Do, and Professor Monica Cotta here on the stage, and she's also the moderator of this session. So professors, please. Welcome all of you to the VinFuture Prize 2022. Please be seated. And here we come with the final topic today. So Professor Monica Cotta, please.
So, hello, we're now in our third panel. I hope you're not too tired. And we are switching the gears a little bit. We're talking more about developing countries and innovation. So, first of all, thanks for being here. And since we just talked about globalization in science technology in the first panel, I'd like if you could give some advice to our students and scientists from developing countries, how to best start an international collaboration that can provide improvements in society, in research, science, education, innovation, technologies for these countries. Can you make a brief comment so then we switch to our topic? Professor Qureisha, please.
Thanks very much, Monica. Just confirming that you can hear me, everyone. I think the first thing is that in establishing partnerships, it is about bringing more than what you can do on your own. And so to do that, you have to have a good idea. And usually in a developing country setting, we have some comparative advantage or some strategic advantage in the question you're asking. And that in terms of advancing that idea, you're looking for people who will bring value. And so in doing that idea, you have to also display excellence, and that shows in peer-reviewed publications. And by reading the peer-reviewed publications, you'll be able to identify people who are working in your field and who are bringing a different lens or perspective. And I would say in choosing a partner, there also has to be some chemistry. You have to like to work with the person you're choosing as a partner, and that partnership has to be underpinned by mutual respect. Thank you.
Thank you. Ananda?
First of all, I want to thank the panel and VinFuture for inviting me to be on this panel. I was here last time, and it's always exciting to do this in front of the students. And hopefully, and especially given this topic is so relevant for people in Vietnam, hopefully we can say something that's useful for you. Generally, I think of science, we just had a panel which talked about the global nature of science. And that's, I think, a natural starting point. When you are from a developing country, you have to remember always that you're not any different. Science is global, which means that you can participate in the global process of science regardless of where you're from. The fact that you are from a developing country in no way diminishes your ability and opportunity to do that. And especially, in today, where the internet connectivity and the way in which collaborations are done across the world, there's no particular reason to stop. But I think to go back to what Professor Karim said, really merit and what you have to offer ultimately is what makes a difference in science. If you have something interesting to offer, then you will naturally find collaborators and partners that are interested in your work, and you can be a part of the science process. So you have to do your work, you have to learn the art and be ready to offer something. But the third part that's equally important to know is that science is also a social process. Your ability to make a difference, your ability to actually get to a point where you can contribute very much depends on other people who value and recognize you. And this is a place where being in a developing country can sometimes be a disadvantage, where you don't know how to reach out and become part of these groups, association, caucuses, clubs, whatever they are. And you do have to make the extra effort to do that. And I think keeping in mind that, that social aspect of science is perhaps one in which you have to consciously choose the people, that you try to talk to and build relationship with, go reach out to them and make yourself known and build partnerships.
Thank you. Let's switch sides a bit. Dan, can you comment on it? How to make international collaborations work?
Sure. Well, this one's on? Yeah. Okay. I've been really lucky because even when I was a graduate student in physics, I would see some invites from researchers I knew through different meetings in Mexico, in Kenya, and in Indonesia, in Kalimantan. And each of them said, come over, we've got some exciting stuff, we'd like you to meet some of the students that are working on these topics. And so for me, the ability to do what the last panel said, to step off the path and to take a risk, was actually built in. And we had colleagues and friends who said, you're going to find more exciting questions the more diverse your team. Gender diversity, ethnic diversity, geographic diversity, those all created some of the most exciting projects I've gotten to do. And when you start on that path, then you get flooded. And the hardest thing now is to give people time because you get so many emails, so many questions. And I just think back when I didn't know what topic I most wanted to do. And I said, only because people listened. And so I want to kind of pay it forward and give that back to young students who haven't even picked their majors yet. And I think that's really why this international collaboration is exciting. But it's also an area where you really have to recognize that the problems we face in my area of clean energy are much bigger than what you get taught in textbooks written by white men sitting in Europe and the US. You've got to reach out, and you get rewarded for doing that.
Great. Ermias, you want to talk a bit?
Sure.
I'm switching sides.
Okay, I'm actually very glad to have this opportunity to talk directly to students because this is something I've been thinking about. myself coming from a developing low-income country, is that when you're approaching people, you really have to do your research. Because all of us, I'm sure, and working in those universities, we get emails on a daily basis from people. There's basically a blast of emails coming in. So, and it's very easy to find out which ones are just sent mass emails or the ones that actually have done the research, right? So if you wanted to have a collaboration, you really have to make the research and make it directed to that person. If you just send a blast of emails, it's not gonna yield anything, or you don't really want to have to work with people who will reply to that as well. So I think making sure that you do your research, making sure that you know what you want, what topics you want to talk about, what kind of collaboration you have. If you do your homework and you approach people, at least you get some sort of direction. So instead of, I would say, so and so might be working on this area, or even you can get an introduction and all that. But if you just send just a blast email, then usually it gets deleted.
Thank you. Thank you, Ramiz. Now, Min, you have a connection with Vietnam and more strongly, so.
Yes, so I think the key word here is collaborations. And for productive collaborations, everyone should bring in their unique part, right? And I have experience working in the US, and then I have 2 years working here at VinUni. And I think because of the internet connections, they are very easy now for people from any side to learn what the other side can do. And then I think follow-up is very important if each side can identify what the key strength they can bring to the table. From a developing country, I think the problems, the context, the local context, where really the massive amount of, the market, the user would be, there's some very unique strength that someone from Vietnam, for example, can bring into the international research arena, and emphasize that indoor reach out for connections and collaboration would really make a researcher from a developing country much more attractive for international collaboration.
Thank you so much for your kind advice. So let's now talk about science and innovation in developing countries, which is the topic of our panel. And I'd like to start with Carisha. She has a brilliant, I admire her so much, career in science in South Africa. And she was one of the first laureates for the VinFuture Special Prize for Innovators from Developing Country last year. So Carisha, what are the challenges you faced in your career, and how have you overcome them?
So, thanks, Monica. I think, as scientists, we all face challenges. And I think that it's how we rise to those challenges, and how do we think a bit out of the box about it as not barriers, but really opportunities. And so for me, one of my favorite mottos is the one from Louis Pasteur, which is that chance favors the prepared mind. And my daughter, who's in the audience, twisted that around to say that when opportunity strikes, that's not when you have to prepare. So I guess some thinking about that. I do also, in terms of the challenges, when we think about developing countries, there's a limited number of skilled scientists, the infrastructure is not state of the art, the funding that you need to raise, and the list can go on and on. So I wanted to share one out-of-the-box approach that CAPRISA, the Center for the AIDS Program of Research in South Africa, did. So we have in South Africa 1 in 5 people living with HIV globally, even though we have less than 1% of the population. HIV is not a problem unique to South Africa, but 70% of the global burden is in Africa, and there are 38 million people living with HIV, 1.5 million new infections, and even though we hear 40 years later, the challenges continue. So given what I was learning as an epidemiologist in South Africa, that one, we were at an early stage of the epidemic in 1990, and women had 4 times more infection than men. Women were getting infected about 5 to 7 years earlier. What I found was the problem was a social problem. But the interventions that were available were all dependent on male cooperation. And so that was the gap we tried to fill. So as this epidemic is growing and evolving, the science was also growing and evolving, and this gap still remained. It wasn't being addressed. We said in a country like South Africa, we can't have one team with an immunologist, with a virologist, with epidemiologists, with clinician scientists to do the clinical trials. So we divvied up and we looked around the country and found where are the experts? And we found a group of experts in virology at the University of Cape Town. We found a group of bioinformaticians in the University of Western Cape. We found a group of immunologists at the University of Witwatersrand. And then we were at the epicenter at the University of KwaZulu-Natal. And so we set up the epidemiological monitoring surveillance system and the clinical trial infrastructure. And we were able to build on that and that partnership. And then we built partnerships strategically, particularly in the US and Europe, where we had gaps, and try to keep up to date on the state of the art in each of these areas. And that's how the partnerships grew between North-South, and then we started to build South-South partnerships. So that's just one approach, and if we had more time, I'd go more into it, but that's the basic idea about think out of the box, think strategically about a multidisciplinary approach. What are the disciplines you're going to need? Who has that? And even if you don't have it, how do you start to build it so the time you need it, you have the critical mass from different perspectives? Thank you.
Yeah, that's great. I don't know if you realize I'm from Brazil, and we have the same situation there. We have to join efforts, share sometimes facilities, and try to build a network that, holds together whenever, particularly when we have this, our institutions are not as strong as they are, for example, in Europe or US and so on. And we are more prone to having a lack of funding for several years in a row, depending on how the economy goes. So this all adds up to the challenges that, Croatia just described so well. So thank you a lot. Okay, so let's move to the next questions for, our panelists. Pursuing science in developing countries is not always a limitation, and always viewing only its advantages might lead to hasty conclusions. How do you feel about this idea, and how it relates to innovation and the impacts it can provide in developing countries? So then, could you just start by, discussing how innovation relates in all this process?
So in my own field, innovation in the energy sector is something that we've tried to quantify from lots of different ways. Economists have looked at how quickly do solar cells or nuclear reactors get better. People in sociology look at what are the epistemic communities, kind of something that Jennifer referred to. How do you bring the people together so that they can make advances, they can learn outside their comfort zone, outside their field? And we work so much on studying innovation that it's become its own subfield. That is something where the kind of partnership between industrializing and industrial nations has actually been incredibly profitable and successful. There were new technologies, small distributed mini grids, solar cells that were just clustered in small groups. They weren't being used in rich countries, but it's now one of the future areas. And that was something that we learned from innovations of small companies in India, in Kenya, in Venezuela, because it was more suited. So I kind of think it comes back to this very simple statement. We don't innovate for they. You generally innovate around problems that you see. It's kind of like the AIDS issue you mentioned, South Africa. And if we don't see the full energy picture, by just looking at grids that are very similar between the US and Europe and Japan and Australia, we miss out on lots of stuff. And we miss out not only on technical things, but about the value of diversity. about the understanding that we need to build more resilient systems, which is now a big topic. But for long periods of time, people studying this in my field didn't think about it. Well, it took data from Mexico and Kenya to say, we need to build grids in areas where we expect power outages. And so in my own kind of cluster, only by having those collaborations internationally focused on innovation did we kind of start to make steps. And by the way, now we have technologies being exported from research centers in Mexico, in Kenya, in Malaysia, back to being adopted in the US and Europe. And so it is beneficial to all, and the data just bears it out again and again. Diversity wins, single-mindedness loses.
Yeah, power outages are really common in developing countries. Min, would you like to?
It's an asset. You might not think so, but it's an asset.
Min, would you like to join up?
Yeah, I'd like to add one angle that a lot of students, myself, I can reflect on, grew up in Vietnam or Asian culture, is the way we've been trained and think about there is only one right way. And you've been hearing a lot of reflection today, the risk-taking and thinking outside the box. And I really think that is the key things that I really like many of students here in the audience to embrace on, that a lot of the time we're not looking for the right way to solve the problems. In research, we look for the new ways and be really bold, and sometimes those new ways may work better in some context that you are familiar with, right? So that requires the really the bravery, and also a little bit of open mindset that we need to embrace and break ourselves from our traditional training.
Thanks, Min. So, Ermias, what about agriculture, for example?
Yeah, so there's quite a lot of challenges within agriculture. If I just for a minute come back to the previous question, I think the way that we can meet challenges is with creativity. So there are some unique challenges in a lot of low-income countries. There is institutional challenges. One example I can give you, when I was at the University of Asmara, was to trying to do some research, and we were able to find the right partners and get the funding from USAID. But the president of the university said, well, give me the money and I will decide how I'm going to spend it. It's like, well, this money is actually for this purpose. We're trying to do some innovation in agriculture and all that. And then the way that we try to solve it is that, so what he really wanted was there was like a Land Cruiser coming with this project, and he really liked that. So we said, okay, why don't we sign for 3 years, it will be part of the project. When the project finishes, it goes back to the university, and then you as the president decide what to do with the vehicle. And that way, we were able to get the funding, we got the agreements, and then we did it that way. So you have to be creative to be able to meet those challenges and actually be able to do the science. So that is kind of an added challenge that when you do science in a lot of low-income countries.
Thank you. So last but not the least, Anandan, how you can share some thoughts with us?
So this is something that personally experienced when I went back to build the research lab of Microsoft in India, and then later in the Vadvani Institute. One of the primary questions that some of us undertook was, what is it that's unique about doing research here? I mean, of course, there is ways in which we can contribute to global scientific research, but what is it that being in India and doing research brings? But think about it, even though many technological advances have been made to solve many problems in health, in agriculture and other domains, there is still a huge gap. People in poor countries, farmers in poor countries in India, still are barely making a subsistence amount of living. And a lot of the modern technology doesn't actually work there. The farms are not big enough. The investments needed are too much. So you start thinking about appropriate solutions. You're thinking about, low cost solutions, but solutions that are sustainable in those conditions, but also ones that can be used by the people, that are the ones that are going to use it. You're not going to become, massively train 600 million farmers to become technologically savvy. So when you start wearing that lens, you begin to come up with new solutions. We found, like for instance, one particular case in terms of TB adherence, a simple cell phone based, not even a smartphone, intervention mechanisms significantly improved, understanding who's actually adhering to the drug regimen and who's not. So once you're on the ground, you begin to see solutions that are quite different from what you might be when you're far away. And if we don't take advantage of the physical conditions and knowledge of the developing countries that we are in, then we are wasting our time, right? So that's where I see the unique opportunities, which really will not come to you unless you are actually there, working there.
Yeah, great. So you see, each country has its examples, how unique we are. So diversity comes back to the table, right? In Brazil, we have biofuels, for example, that were developed there and helped us go through many of the oil crises, more or less balanced. Okay, so when you talk about innovation, there are several aspects we should consider. And one is that cooperation with a company usually requiring signing many terms involving IP, intellectual property, and applications and so on, which are quite different from cooperation terms in fundamental research, which most universities are used. So for developing countries in cooperation with developing countries, is the IP problem risky? So, Horatia, could you fill in?
I think that's the real hot potato issue, and it's quite a complex one. And I kind of think about, Newton sitting under that tree, and when that apple fell on his head, he said, how can I monetize this? So when did science shift from being, an endeavor for public good to one that is about making money? And I think, we hear today, compared to in January, where there were so many restrictions. We had the first pandemic many of us lived through, and we've learned and we're reminded very quickly in the first quarter of 2020 that we are all interconnected and we have a shared vulnerability. So when we find solutions, we all contributed. Let me just take vaccines, for example. Many developing countries participated in the evaluation of those vaccines to establish what works and what doesn't work. And we all celebrated in less than a year, unprecedented 6 vaccines that were efficacious and safe. And that's when the rubber hit the road, towards it, because suddenly we saw those countries that discovered and were in charge of discovery, are responsible for discovery, we're not thinking beyond that. In HIV, post-trial access was a given. We're dealing with a global problem. If you contribute to it, access is guaranteed. And suddenly we went from a world united to a world very divided by those who have and those who have not. I think it's completely unacceptable if we take the Moderna vaccine, was developed with US taxpayers' money. Through government, developed the vaccine and then sold it for a higher price than Pfizer, which didn't take as much government money to produce its vaccine. So this situation is a reminder that disasters, epidemics, pandemics are going to be very much part of our life as we move forward, and we have to fix this problem. And we can't have a situation where monopolies dominate who receives, who doesn't. We cannot have a situation where politics defines who will be given some vaccine doses if you support me on this issue, or not. And that we really have to, as a global community, redefine how we generate knowledge for public good. And the IP is very much part of it, and we have to revisit it. And so if you're expecting an easy answer, it's not an easy answer. And I'm very curious to hear how the rest of the panelists think about the issue of IP and how we think about knowledge that impacts millions and billions of people, and how do we produce it, how do we use it, and how do we ensure that there's equitable access and that we don't have regions of the world or countries of the world that simply do not have access because they cannot afford it, because they are as vulnerable. We've learned with COVID, if I just want to add this point, that even if we do this, like protect ourselves, buy too many doses that we need, that at the end of the day, we've seen how variants of concern have emerged. And the science is telling us that we need to take a much more egalitarian, a much more equitable approach to finding solutions and ensuring those solutions benefit everybody who needs to benefit from it.
Thank you so much. It's really inspiring. I don't know if you know that in Brazil we broke the patents for the HIV drugs, and we created one of the most supportive health systems in this area. So that was because we just went to the fight. Sometimes you have to do it. But on a more general ground, IP is permeating all our relationships between universities and companies. So I like to, when you talk about developing countries, we also have usually a huge effort in agribusiness. This is, in Brazil, is a big issue now. So Hermias, could you fill in how the IP runs in that session?
Yeah, so I'll give you an example working through the IP issues. So the US State Department tasked us to help the Vietnamese livestock sector to improve its productivity. So we came to Vietnam about 7 years ago, and we met with a lot of people from the ministry to the farmers and the extension agents and everybody who was involved in this. And one thing that we discovered is that there's a great need to develop a ration formulation software that people would actually be used, and that's based in Vietnam and does in Vietnamese and all that. So one way to do that is to use the US usually have the National Academy of Sciences. They produce this ration formulation software for the country. So we said, okay, can we use that and customize it so that it will be more relevant to the condition in Vietnam? And they didn't like it. They didn't want us to use the science behind it with the software. So after a lot of dialogues, what we came up with was the Vietnamese version can be used in Vietnam freely without any IP restrictions. But for us, before we translate it into Vietnamese, we have to develop it in English. So that English version, we cannot use it. But the Vietnamese version can be freely distributed and do that. So that kind of actually opened the opportunity now to develop ration formulation software in different languages. So now we're doing in Vietnamese, in Khmer, in Lao, and Amharic, and French. So all of those languages are okay, but the English versions of those languages are not. So there are ways to kind of go around sort of the IP issues with the dialogue.
Thank you, Hermias. So switching gears again, we talk about digital revolution. It's been opening tremendous new opportunities in many global issues, and particularly for developing nations. You know, software barriers are much easier to handle than shipping consumables across borders. So the problem is that the lion's share of profits remain in rich nations where the breakthroughs originated. So what are the opportunities for developing nations to more fully participate in a cycle of innovation, investment, and wealth creation in this next generation of technology-based industries? So please, Min, can you?
Yeah, I'm also a computer scientist, and I think the ease of sharing software innovations, a lot of them in the open source, really make it very easy for researchers and engineers in a developing country to participate and to learn very quickly the best practice. And I really think that is a great opportunity that people who work in this area should take advantage of. Countries that have done very well, like China, India, are really where they put a lot of emphasis on how to quickly learn and how to develop their own innovations based on what available in the open source. So that I think is one of the key area that I hope also Vietnam can participate.
And I'm sure VinFuture University will help a lot. And Ananda?
So I think it's, in my opinion, right, there's a statement in the question which is about countries where the breakthroughs originated being the way. So in fact, I don't think it's really a question about where the breakthroughs originated. It's where the R&D infrastructure is well set up. And there is a network of R&D institutions. And then, of course, the access to market and the business side of it and so on. I think that's much more important than where the breakthroughs originated. And part of the reason I'm saying this, if you look at it that way, then there is an opportunity for developing countries to actually get in the game. And if you look at many of the developing countries, India again as an example, there are very, very good companies that are large and have complete coverage over domains within the country and cater to the international markets. But if you look at how much they actually invest in doing research and development in order to develop new technologies and solutions, you'll find it's very small. Because they have come to their market success through a different type of business model, by providing a service to a variety of customers on the basis of existing innovations, and often on the basis of taking advantage of the low labor cost. So as long as the mindset is about these things, it will be very hard for these countries, like India again, to be a place where R&D is done and thereby creating opportunities for greater, because profit goes to where R&D is done in the end. And I think that that's primarily the main thing. Of course, here, countries can help. If you look at countries which were, I guess, at one point, developing countries, Japan, starting from the 50s, and how it came up to be a world leader in technology, automobile, electronics, and more recently, China, there have been systematic efforts in the society to make sure that this kind of a process takes place and the transformation occurs. And that's where the government policies can help. Without these two, I don't really see how the change can happen.
Thanks a lot. So, learning about innovation that I'm learning a lot. Okay, so from a larger picture, how governments can stimulate innovation in developing countries, domestic innovation. So then, how?
Let me try to answer by telling a story as opposed to kind of the broad one. So when I left traditional theoretical physics and moved into energy, I was working in Nicaragua for the Nicaraguan government because the US government was embargoing Nicaragua. And so you couldn't even bring old IBM computers. The students won't know these words, we all do. 286 and 386, really ancient machines, they didn't have them. So I was part of a non-profit group, sort of an activist organization that would collect these old computers and drive them down from Texas through Mexico, through Guatemala, and take them to Nicaragua. And so we were an NGO working for the Nicaraguan government. Now, Nicaragua's had its ups and downs, but what came out of it was this really interesting statement from the Minister of Science. And he said, whenever people from Europe and the US come to collaborate with us, they want some local to be the face of it, and they talk and get us the community, speak the local language, whatever else, but then all the profits, all the research goes back to Europe and US. And this is the most asymmetric and exploitive relationship possible. So why did I tell this kind of long story? 20 years ago, there was an effort to kind of break through the IP side, not on the patents, but on the research knowledge upstream. And in the US, it was the founding of a new journal called PLOS, a public access journal for science. And for whatever reason, they founded PLOS in many fields, and I published in it, but they didn't found a journal in the environment. And so I got called up by the Institute of Physics in the UK, and they said, would you like to be the first editor of this new journal? And I said, sure, but there's a couple conditions. One is that there can be open access. When it's published, everyone gets it. And so there'll be page charges, but only paid by researchers who are in industrial nations, and if the true lead researcher is not a grad student or postdoc. So older, more established labs pay, developing countries don't pay. And that was accepted. And then the second part of it was all research published had to provide all of their data. And so you get to publish your first paper, but then the data is out there. And we've rejected 20% of the papers just because the researchers refuse. And so that process is one that really enabled a number of clusters of researchers, a group in East Africa working on off-grid energy, a group working on biodiversity in Ecuador, all credit that open access to allowing the data science side of the story to mean they could access stuff earlier on. So it's a long story, I apologize, but it highlighted for me a little bit of how you can take the traditional structure and change it in a way that actually engendered cooperation.
Thank you. Yeah, open access has a long story, and now it's changed a bit, right? So let's finish with one more answer. Croatia, you were part of, related to United Nations and WHO groups, working groups. How do you see this, how you can foster innovation in developing countries? How, these organizations can help?
So I'm going to use the COVID example again, and I just want to underscore the importance of open access. We saw it in COVID. For the first time, all the paywalls dropped, and you saw the knowledge generation process was, for the first time, more equitable globally. And the first was the Twitter posting of the genetic sequence that really triggered the identification of the virus, etc. But my question was around UN and WHO, and I'm not a spokesperson for either the United Nations or the World Health Organization, but I can certainly share two examples. And the first is that all 198 member states of the United Nations have committed to the Sustainable Development Goals. And if you're not familiar with it, I'd encourage you to read it. Those 17 goals are really designed to ensure equal development of everybody across the globe. And because there are disparities within and between countries, even in industrialized countries. So the Sustainable Development Goal, and particularly now, where next year we will be doing a midterm review of the way we are towards reaching those goals. The thing that we should be looking at is what is the role of science, technology, and innovation. And there have been some pilot projects done in several countries developing these roadmaps that show how STI can accelerate achievement of these goals. And this has really stimulated more interest. That's one. And then from the WHO, I think we can all agree that they played an amazing leadership role in terms of our response to COVID-19. But the thing that some of us may not be familiar with is right up front and very early on, when we were still looking at what products and what drugs were on the shelf that we could repurpose, WHO set up a platform called the Solidarity Platform, which included as many member countries who wanted to be part of it. So the first time actually taking these drugs and simultaneously evaluating it across the globe for any, and we had countries from Europe, well, literally all over the world participating in these platforms. And I think it set something new in terms of us finding solutions quickly, because typically the way like medical knowledge is generated is you'll have it tested and evaluated in industrialized countries, and maybe 10, 20 years later, we'll still be waiting for it to trickle down to us. And these solidarity platforms, both for vaccines and therapeutics, allowed a rapid response. Recently and currently, there's an outbreak of Ebola in Uganda. And all the lessons that we've learned from COVID, its application in Uganda has meant very contained spread of Ebola. Think about the West African epidemic not so many years ago. And then we've used the same platform, an adaptive trial design platform, to start evaluating the vaccines while this epidemic is unfolding. So I think these innovations at WHO and then the STIs for SDGs are opportunities where science, technology, innovation can really play a critical role in leapfrogging us, in accelerating our progress. And honestly, at this point in time, where we're seeing a convergence of so many of our challenges that we've dealt with very sequentially, very slowly, made some progress, that time is past. And we really have to be thinking about how can we bring the best minds together and jumpstart that. And the UN, where we all member states, provide a perfect platform to facilitate that type of collaboration and solidarity and unity in action.
Oh, thank you. Thanks a lot. Thanks to all speakers. And also, it's a good reminder, we should not lose sight of everything we learned from the pandemic or from a crisis. So, I think most of us only faced once in a lifetime. Yeah, we cannot forget. That's my point. So I think now it's time to gather questions from the audience. If you're not too tired, for our panelists, want to talk about? How about the girls in the audience? Huh? Raise hands. Oh, that's one over there. Yeah, there. Yeah. Okay.
Hi, I'm Thang. I'm a Vin University student, and I have a question of innovation. So, as the emergence of many innovative technologies, such as a big AI data structure, emerges and commercializes, starting with very recently is the Chat GPT thing. So, a lot of questions revolve around the restructuring of many policies, mainly referring to education and also very traditional systems. So how would you go about and approach and tackle this problem in developing countries? Because I personally would argue that these type of innovative technology would be banned from usage rather than changing the existing systems.
So this is a great question. It's kind of like the one before. It's not easy to answer, so answer will just be like a part. But one interesting thing is that certainly in the area that I work in sustainability, we know we're failing. We're not reducing greenhouse gas emissions fast enough. We're not protecting biodiversity. We're not doing a lot of things. It's not the science. We're doing very well on individual innovations. It's holistic systems thinking. And this is going to sound a little broad, but one aspect that's really interesting here is there's a whole new class of public policies emerging that put the onus on creating knowledge on the institutions that are most slow. Utilities that provide electricity in many countries are seen as dinosaurs. They don't innovate very quickly, they don't invest. But there's policies that say, we'll pay you based on how much you create new information. So one particular tool is to say, I'm not just going to pay you for every kilowatt hour generated. I'm going to pay you based on how much you improve over last year, efficiency, cleanliness, et cetera. carbon pricing, different policies. And so taking firms that are seen as slow actors and rewarding them only based on things that they create new knowledge is one way. It's a big class of things, but it's an area that leverages AI, it leverages machine learning, it leverages diversity. It gets applied differently in different areas, but it's something that allows governments that are actually interested to move ahead, not just to protect the dinosaurs of the past, to move forward. And so very broad, I mean, a little bit broad answer, but your question highlights an area that policymakers need to be much more aggressive and take more of the risks that Jennifer highlighted. And this is one of the tools to do that.
Thanks. Who else? Min, you want to talk a bit?
Yeah, so two things. I'm so glad that, our panel is after the previous panel. So one thing we should really learn, talking about the role model from a developing country point of view is really see how the female scientists, because of all the things that was difficult, was not conceived that, a female would go in science, right? And they was able to, look at our role model around it. And I think the same thing, like, both take risk, speak up, look to the role model, talk, articulate or visit. All of this, I think, is so effective, and we should, use that. The second, actually today I found very intriguing that I read a news piece in Vietnam that Vietnamese government, they put in, this typical requirement that companies now have to take a certain percentage of their profits and reinvest in research and development. And they look at back, it's more than 80% of those R&D funds are unused. So there's a huge opportunity out there. Research funding, companies now would, in Vietnam or other developing countries, would really, hunger for new innovations, right? So I think it's a really great opportunities for many young students here to start, learn, and be able to have a voice on that new area.
If I can share, I don't know if you guys wanted to talk about it, but one thing in Brazil that we have a policy like this, and Brazil is a very unequal country, right? But for example, in the São Paulo state where we are located, the university is located, we have for 60 years a funding agency that consistently has put money in research. And I just had the news last week saying that for the first time, that's the only place in the country where you start to have more research in industry than in universities, like most our research is in public universities. So that thing has to add on, these public policies had to be continuously elaborated with this aggressive view just to pursue and get somewhere. So that's something we...
Let me just add one tiny thing to that. In several places, there's now requirements that boards of companies be more diverse. There was just a large study in Silicon Valley that found companies that had more women on the executive team not only raised money faster, but met their objective goals more quickly than those that didn't. And so if you were looking for quantitative evidence that diversity generates innovation, there's a clear, large study from California.
Yeah, there are many, and in PLOS as well. Okay, we had a second question. Now I'm missing the girl who raised her hand. Can you? Yes.
Good morning, distinguished panelists. You're talking about so much about the collaborators and then taking risks, being bold. But for developing countries, we are like lack of a lot of resources like infrastructure, facility, and fair environments. So that cause a lot of talented students and researchers and scientists going abroad to taking their opportunities to go further. So how do you deal with that problems?
Yeah, I think you heard earlier on about This is really the global competition for talents. And I look at it broadly. I think in maybe a short term, there could be a drainage of talents going abroad. But student going abroad, and you have a certain unique skill set and upbringing, as I mentioned, you contribute something uniquely to that global, quest for science, right? And I think you understand about where the science can eventually apply in the upbringing local context. So maybe that's an opportunity to learn the best practice, and maybe down the road, you see many role model before can have ways to come back, directly or indirectly, find way to contribute. So I think, if I would look at that as really a positive, looking at the developed country and developing country. I think that now is one of the strengths, because the developing country, we have to go to developed country, then we learn much better. Whereas, from a developed country, sometimes there's no motivation to go outside of that comfort zone, right? And maybe in long terms, that is a unique advantage of someone coming from a developing country.
Yeah, so I think the issue of this brain drain is very, very important. I'm guilty of it. I was originally from Eritrea, and now I work in California. But at least I had a chance to get huge funding from USAID, about $20 million, and work in Ethiopia and that region where we are actually doing something to change and improve the productivity. So there is a way in which you can give back, and then you can help those countries as well. But then also in the first session, we heard that science is globalized now. So you can do all the science in a globalized manner, still keeping ties with the people where you've had your undergraduate or graduate courses, and continue that, and mentoring also. So mentorship, creating mentorship programs for people in low-income countries, I think is a really great way to give back and to build capacity.
Thank you. I think our
thank you.
Our
Thank
time
you so
is
much.
up.
Thank you so much, Professor Amias Kibrev, to help us finish this round of answers for all the audience. And now I would love to address one more question for all of the professors here with online platform. So, the developing countries themselves containing various of traditional culture. So, the technology and globalization will help or destroy that kind of, the treasure of us. So please, Professor Amias Kibrev.
Well, I think in most cases, the technology that's been developed elsewhere has the potential to help a lot. So I'm going to give an example in agriculture, for example, where a few years ago, people would not have the ability to communicate. Now you see a lot of rural areas that actually have smartphones. And what that allowed is then people would get information more easily. And when is the best time to plant the crops? When's the best time, or what kind of feed you need to give to your livestock and all that? All of that can now be easily moved around, and kind of you take one more step, and you don't have to go through all the pains that other countries have gone through to get to that stage. So there are some opportunities where you can actually go to the next stage and use that technology to be able to help the farmers in this case.
Yeah, and about Professor Minh Do, do you have any ideas about this question? Because in Vietnam, we're so proud that with the traditional culture of us, and we are in the tipping point when the globalization and the science and technology meets up in this country. So what do you think about that?
Yeah, I think it's very important to keep the traditions, but technologies would be there, regardless of whether we want it or not. And I think, progressively, society have go through a lot of these innovations, and I think rather than avoid it, right? I think we should embrace it, and really we heard a lot of wonderful things about bring the world be more connected, help developing countries, and we look out like I mean there are a lot of people in rural areas. Of course, we have to care about their tradition and environment and many things. But if there's a choice, they would want better life than what they already have now. So I think it is a good opportunity that we just need to enable it and then let people to choose.
Yeah, sure.
So
Go ahead, please.
in terms of, it's generally viewed, tradition and technology are often somewhat opposed to each other, simply because tradition holds on to the past and technology is much about changing the future. On the other hand, actually, traditions really often are a result of solving certain societal problems, and they became traditions because they worked successfully in dealing with that. So in that sense, technology can actually improve and change those traditions. I think you just have to be open-minded about it. I think when they become traditions, it'll just become much more widely practiced. So I think that conflict is superficial.
One more time, thank you so much for all your answers. And it's like the guideline for all of us to be here, to be more confident, to dedicate our life to science, for all of the young students and maybe the science in the future in the developing country like Vietnam, to be more confident to working on science and to make a change, not only in Vietnam, in all over the world also. One more time, thank you so much for all the panelists here. One more time, give it up for our professors. Thank you so much. You help us to finish the first event in our VinFuture Prize Award 2022. And now it's time for you guys to take a break, and we will meet you in this afternoon. And we hope that discussion today will help you to know more and understand more about the scientific world that we lived in. And thank you so much one more time. Goodbye and see you this afternoon. Thank you so much, professors.